The cabin filled with the low rumble of the engines as the flight attendant leaned in close to Leon, her expression a mix of sympathy and duty. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to relocate to another seat because of a passenger complaint. It's for the comfort of everyone on this flight from Chicago to Los Angeles." Leon stared at her for a moment, his mind reeling from the sudden turn, the words hitting him like a slap. After all the years he had fought for his country in the army, keeping his sexuality hidden to survive the ranks, now facing the same prejudice in the job he loved as a flight attendant. Maxwell, seated next to him, his partner of 3 years, sat rigid, his face turning red with quiet fury. "This is unacceptable," Maxwell said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Leon is a decorated veteran who served this country with honor, and you're treating him like this because of who he loves." The complaining passenger, a middle-aged businessman in a crisp suit, smirked from across the aisle. "I pay good money for this flight, and I don't want to be uncomfortable with that kind of display," he snapped, crossing his arms. The murmurs grew louder, some passengers nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in disapproval or looking away awkwardly. The flight attendant sighed, motioning for Leon to stand. Leon rose slowly, his legs feeling heavy, flashbacks to the battlefield in Afghanistan, where he had carried wounded comrades through dust and danger, without hesitation, only to be questioned now for simply sitting beside the man he loved. He picked up his small carry-on bag, the weight of his military service dog tags hidden under his shirt pressing against his chest like a reminder of every compromise he had made to stay strong. Maxwell stood too, his hand brushing Leon's in a brief show of support. "We are not moving," Leon said calmly, but firmly, his voice carrying the steady tone he had learned in the service. "This is discrimination, pure and simple." The attendant looked uncomfortable, glancing around at the growing tension. "Sir, please don't make this difficult," she whispered. "The airline policy is to accommodate complaints to keep the peace." As Leon stepped into the aisle, the intercom suddenly crackled to life with a familiar, authoritative voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Maxwell Thompson speaking from the cockpit. I have been informed of an incident on board involving unfair treatment of one of our passengers. As the pilot in command, I am exercising my authority to delay this flight until the issue is resolved to my satisfaction. We will not depart until Mr. Leon Ramirez is allowed to stay in his assigned seat. The complaining party is addressed appropriately. Safety and respect are non-negotiable on my flights." The cabin erupted in a mix of gasps, applause, and protests. Phones came out as passengers began recording the moment, the air thick with shock and excitement. Leon turned to Maxwell, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and deep pride. The man who had stood by him through nights of nightmares and days of doubt was now risking everything for their shared dignity. The ground crew was called immediately. The airline supervisor boarded the plane, her heels clicking down the aisle as negotiations began in hushed tones near the front. The businessman argued loudly, waving his ticket, but the supervisor listened carefully to Maxwell's radioed instructions from the cockpit. Leon sat back down beside Maxwell, their shoulders touching in silent solidarity. "I can't believe you're doing this," Leon whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You could lose your job over this." Maxwell squeezed his hand under the tray table. "After everything we've been through, the deployments, the hiding, the fear of losing each other, this is nothing compared to losing you to the same hate that almost broke you in the service." Leon felt a wave of memories wash over him, the lonely nights in the barracks, wondering if anyone would ever understand the real him, the day he finally came out to Maxwell after a support group meeting for veterans, the way their connection had grown from shared stories to a love that felt like home. Passengers began to talk among themselves, some offering words of support to Leon, a young woman across the row saying quietly, "Good for you. Both my brother is gay, and he served too." Others whispered disapprovingly, but the energy had shifted, the delay forcing everyone to confront the moment. The supervisor returned after 10 minutes, announcing that the complaining passenger would be reseated in first class at no extra cost, and the flight would proceed once everyone was settled. But the damage was done. The incident had already spread through social media, videos going viral, with headlines starting to form about the pilot who halted a plane for love and justice. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, Leon leaned his head against Maxwell's shoulder, exhaustion and relief mixing in his chest. This was not the end, he knew. It was only the beginning of a much larger conversation about who they were and what they were willing to fight for. The flight to Los Angeles passed in a blur of quiet conversations and stolen glances, Leon replaying the morning in his mind, how they had woken up in their Chicago apartment, the sunlight streaming through the windows, Maxwell making coffee while Leon packed for the trip. They had laughed about nothing important the way couples do when life feels steady, but underneath it all Leon had carried the old weight of his identity, the fear that one day it would cost him everything again. Now that day had arrived not in combat, but in the ordinary cruelty of everyday prejudice. Maxwell had always been the steady one, the one who encouraged Leon to apply for the flight attendant position after his honorable discharge, the one who said love should never be hidden in the skies they both loved so much. By the time they landed in Los Angeles, the story had exploded online news outlets, picking it up as a feel-good tale of courage mixed with debate about airline policies and passenger rights. At the gate, a small group of reporters waited, cameras flashing as Leon and Maxwell walked off together hand in hand for the first time in public without hesitation. Maxwell pulled Leon close, ignoring the questions for a moment. "We did the right thing," he said softly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Leon nodded, the internal storm of doubt and fear beginning to quiet, replaced by a quiet strength he had not felt since his days in uniform. This moment, the removal, the halt, the stand they had taken, it was a turning point not just for them, but for the unseen battles so many others fought every day. File 2. The bright California sun greeted them as they stepped out of Lex, the warm breeze carrying the distant scent of ocean and palm trees, a stark contrast to the tension still lingering from the flight. Leon and Maxwell collected their bags in silence, the weight of the day settling in as they made their way to the rental car counter. News vans lined the curb, reporters shouting questions about the halted flight, the veteran, the pilot, and the stand for equality. Leon kept his head high, but inside he felt the familiar pull of old wounds, the years in the military where coming out could have ended his career, the friends he lost touch with after his discharge because he feared their judgment. Maxwell handled the media with calm professionalism. "We simply refuse to let prejudice dictate our journey," he said into a microphone, his voice steady. "Leon is my partner and a hero who served this country. No one should be removed from a seat for being who they are." Back at their hotel in Santa Monica, they finally had a moment alone, the room overlooking the Pacific, the waves crashing rhythmically below. Maxwell pulled Leon into a gentle hug, the kind that spoke volumes without words. "I was so scared for you back there," Leon admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "Not because of the seat, but because I know how much this brings up for you, the nights you wake up reliving the explosions, the friends we lost, the secrecy that nearly destroyed you." Maxwell nodded, sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand tracing the scar on Leon's arm from a roadside bomb in Kandahar. "I know. But seeing you stand there so strong reminded me why I fell in love with you. You've carried so much alone, and today we showed the world that we don't have to anymore." Their conversation stretched late into the night, unpacking the layers of their relationship, how they had met at a veteran support group in Chicago. Maxwell, already a pilot transitioning from Air Force Reserve, Leon fresh out of service, struggling to find purpose in civilian life. The next morning brought more attention, their phones buzzing with messages from family and friends. Leon's sister called from Texas, her voice warm but cautious. "I'm proud of you, Leon, but Mom and Dad saw the news. They're worried about the backlash." Leon sighed, the family dynamics a constant thread in his life, his parents' conservative roots clashing with his truth ever since he had come out 5 years ago. Maxwell listened supportively, his own family more accepting, but still distant after his divorce before meeting Leon. They spent the day walking along the beach, the same Malibu stretch where they had shared so many happy moments, the sun bright on their faces, the water sparkling. Leon felt a sense of renewal, the incident forcing him to confront his identity not as a burden, but as a source of power. Maxwell shared stories from his cockpit, the isolation of command, the quiet pride he felt every time he flew, knowing Leon was part of the crew that kept passengers safe. As the week unfolded in Los Angeles, they attended a small veterans gathering where Leon spoke openly for the first time about his experiences, the pressure of don't ask, don't tell, the relief after its repeal, the ongoing struggle for acceptance even in uniform. Maxwell stood beside him, the bond between them visible to everyone, a testament to growth through shared pain. But not everything was smooth. A former colleague for the airline reached out with a warning. The company was reviewing Maxwell's actions and Leon's position might be at risk. The misunderstanding stung a friend who had once supported them, now questioning if the public stand was worth the professional cost. Leon felt the betrayal deeply, pacing the hotel room late one night. "Why does it always come to this?" he asked Maxwell, "the choice between being true to myself and keeping the life we built." Maxwell held him close. "Because the world is still learning, but we are the ones teaching it, one flight, one conversation at a time." Their time in California became a bridge between past and future, the romantic walks on the beach reminding them of simpler days, the picnics in parks where they first dreamed of a life without hiding. Leon began to see the incident not as a crisis, but as a catalyst, the removal from that seat pushing him toward a fuller version of himself. Maxwell watched with quiet admiration the way Leon opened up to strangers at the beach, sharing his veteran story without shame. By the end of the week, they flew back to Chicago renewed but aware that the real challenges lay ahead: the family visit planned for the holidays, the airline inquiry, the public scrutiny that would test their resilience. Back in their Chicago apartment, the city lights twinkling through the large windows, the routine of daily life resumed, but everything felt different. The halted flight had changed the air between them, making every conversation deeper, every touch more intentional. Leon returned to work on shorter routes, his colleagues offering mixed reactions, some clapping him on the back, others avoiding eye contact, the division mirroring the larger society they navigated. Maxwell faced a formal review at the airline, his captain's status on the line, but he remained unapologetic, telling his superiors that safety included emotional safety for all passengers. The internal conflict for Leon intensified during quiet nights, the PTSD symptoms he had managed for years, the sudden sounds of crowds flaring up as media coverage continued. One evening, they drove to the Rocky Mountains for a weekend getaway, the same scenic overlook, where they had embraced under clear skies, the vast vistas reminding them of the bigger picture beyond personal struggles. Leon opened up about his early days in the service, the fear of discovery, the letters he wrote to Maxwell, before they even met, the way service had shaped his sense of duty. Maxwell listened, sharing his own journey from a small town in Illinois, where being gay meant isolation, the decision to join the reserves as a way to prove his worth. Their bond deepened through these talks, the sacrifices they had made, the trade-offs between career and authenticity, the awakening that love could be both anchor and catalyst for change. Family tensions rose when Leon's parents visited from Texas, the dinner table conversation turning awkward when his father mentioned the news clip. "We support you, son, but did you have to make such a scene?" his father said, the words carrying the weight of years of unspoken disappointment. Leon felt the old pull of wanting approval, the internal battle between honoring his roots and claiming his truth. Maxwell stepped in calmly, explaining the principle behind the delay, the way prejudice had no place in the skies or anywhere. The visit ended in uneasy peace, but it planted seeds of understanding, his mother hugging Leon longer than usual, whispering him trying to learn. The weeks turned into months, the story fading from headlines but leaving lasting ripples. Leon receiving messages from other veterans thanking him for speaking up. Maxwell promoted despite the review, his stand earning respect from peers. Yet betrayal came from an unexpected place, a close friend from the support group leaking private details to a tabloid, twisting their relationship into a narrative of drama. The misunderstanding hurt deeply, Leon questioning who he could trust, the crisis forcing a confrontation where he and Maxwell chose transparency over silence. Through it all, their love grew stronger, the romantic moments in their apartment, the slow dances in sunlight reaffirming that growth came from facing the hard truths together. The airline inquiry concluded with a warning for Maxwell, but no demotion, the public support too strong to ignore, Leon keeping his position but with new assignments that kept him closer to home. The experience brought clarity to Leon's path. He began volunteering at veteran centers, sharing his story of identity and service, the internal conflicts that once paralyzed him now becoming tools for helping others. Maxwell supported every step, his own growth evident in the way he advocated for inclusive policies at work, the pivotal choice to halt the flight opening doors he never imagined. A misunderstanding with Leon's family escalated during the holidays, his brother arriving with preconceived notions from the news, the argument revealing deep-seated fears about reputation and tradition. Leon stood his ground, the sacrifice of potential estrangement weighing heavy, but the awakening that his truth was non-negotiable. Maxwell was there through the tears, the late-night talks, the decision to give space while holding hope for reconciliation. Their relationship faced its own tests, the pressure of public life, the doubts about whether the stand was worth the cost, but each challenge strengthened their commitment, the romantic getaways to the beach and mountains serving as resets where joy and love reminded them of the life they were building. File 5. Society continued to react, the incident sparking broader conversations about discrimination in travel and workplaces. Leon and Maxwell invited to panels where they spoke honestly about the emotional toll, the prejudice, the hyphens between veteran and gay, the choices that defined their path. Family reconciliation began slowly, Leon's mother reaching out with a letter expressing pride, the first step toward healing. The betrayal from the friend was addressed in a direct conversation, forgiveness extended, but boundaries set, the lesson in trust shaping their circle. Internal crises surfaced for Leon, the PTSD flaring during a turbulent flight, the memories blending with a plane incident, but Maxwell grounded him, the partnership a safe harbor. Their growth was evident in small decisions, Leon coming out more fully at work, Maxwell mentoring younger pilots on authenticity, the trade-offs yielding a richer life. As the one-year anniversary approached, they returned to the original route from Chicago to Los Angeles, the same seats, now symbols of triumph, the flight passing without incident but filled with reflection. New conflicts arose with media follow-ups, the pressure testing their patience, but they chose grace, the understanding that change was gradual. A pivotal moment came when Leon received an award for advocacy, the speech highlighting his journey from hidden soldier to visible advocate. Maxwell, in the audience, tears in his eyes. The sacrifices had been real, the job risks, the family strains, the public, but the rewards, deeper connections, authentic living, a love that endured. Their story inspired others, veterans reaching out, couples sharing similar experiences, the ripple effect of one decision to stand. Climax built as another complaint surfaced on a flight, but this time Leon handled it with calm authority, the crew supporting him, the lessons learned turning potential crisis into progress. Maxwell watched from the cockpit, the pride immense, the bond unbreakable. The confrontation with lingering doubts resolved in a quiet mountain hike, the embrace under the sun, affirming their path. The years that followed brought stability and continued growth. Leon and Maxwell traveling the country, speaking at events, their home in Chicago, a haven of laughter and support. Family fully embraced them, friends gathered for celebrations, the world a little kinder because of their courage. The journey from that removed seat to a halted flight had forged them into stronger men, the emotional awakening, complete, the love enduring through every test. Is it true that standing up for equality always requires personal sacrifice? True or false?